Tonight on The Wrap, Jeffrey Epstein's claims about why former Prince Andrew lost his job as trade envoy. Our analysis of the Epstein files reveals that on the day Andrew stepped back from the role, Epstein told an associate it was Charles's doing. Also tonight.
Upon receipt of information that I felt it was relevant, I passed this on to the Metropolitan Police in good faith.
The Commons Speaker reveals that he told police he'd received information that Lord Mandelson could be a flight risk. Detectives have tonight apologised to the Speaker for what they described as inadvertently revealing information. Plus, we report from Boulton and Denton as voters prepare to go to the polls in one of the most significant by-elections in years. Can Labour hang on to a traditional stronghold in the face of challenges from Reform and the Greens? And the rubbish just keeps on piling up. Local authorities reveal how England's fly tipping problem is only getting worse. Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with Adam Boulton and Lucy Fisher, plus a first look at the front pages coming up of tomorrow's newspapers, including coverage of the Commons Speaker's admission about speaking to the police about Lord Mandelson. Well, hello, good evening to you. Lucy, Adam, welcome as well. We begin tonight with an email that Sky News has uncovered in the Epstein files, in which Jeffrey Epstein blames someone he names as Charles for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor losing his job as UK trade envoy. Andrew served in the role for a decade until 2011. On Thursday of last week, Andrew was arrested over allegations that he had shared sensitive information with Epstein during his work as the UK Special Representative on Trade and Investment. Andrew has denied wrongdoing. Well, as part of our investigation into the millions of documents released by US authorities, we've found this email sent by Jeffrey Epstein to an associate on the day that Andrew lost his job. Epstein's associate says lots of TV coverage on PA and always big feature on you, insane. Sky News believes PA refers to Prince Andrew. In response, Epstein says, I assume he knows that this is Charles's doing. Well, let's bring in our guest then. A crucial role, one might say, for Prince Andrew as he was then from 2001 to 2011. And this is Epstein's response to why it seems he stepped back from that role.
Really interesting, this dropping tonight, because so far a lot of the scrutiny has been on how he got the role in the first place. Some suggestions, the Queen, supposedly her favourite son, had made clear she wanted him to have some kind of role like this. Some question marks about whether Peter Mandelson was involved in suggesting it or making it happen. But very interesting tonight, this email hinting at this idea that now King Charles III was responsible in some way for his brother losing that role. I think also interesting to note that we're now more than 3 weeks on from this tranche of files having dropped on the Department of Justice website, and there's just so much in it that organisations like Sky, like the FT, are still finding fresh news lines every day.
And we know the survivors in Washington, even yesterday, said that there's another 3 million documents to be released. The royal family must be desperate, Adam, for separation from Andrew's alleged activities. But how does this, how does the king come out of this, do you think?
Well, at one level, if it's true, it's good news for King Charles because it shows that this period when Andrew was dropped as a trade envoy came after the revelation of the photograph in Central Park in New York of him with Epstein. And if Charles was saying he's got to go, then I think that will be to his credit, because a lot of the insinuation at the moment is that the royal family have covered up and that they knew what Andrew was up to and all the rest of it. What fascinates me about this is Epstein's mode of operation. I mean, I'm trying to think your analogy of what, and the only one I can think of is Mephistopheles, who kind of destroyed Dr. Faustus to sell his soul, because he's so sensitive to the minutiae of how people feel and the vulnerabilities that they're feeling. And he's basically going straight in and saying, driving a wedge between Andrew and his brother, which, of course, works to his benefit because Andrew remains loyal to him as his friend. I mean, he's a fantastically manipulative person. Interesting, too, is that the Sky Files show that subsequently there's an exchange with Ghislaine Maxwell, who might, I think, be the recipient of that. What is blotted out and what isn't seems to be a bit random in these files, because she then says, why is he gone? Which you would have thought was a bit obvious, because, of course, the other thing that Epstein's doing is deflecting the blame from himself. He's saying, oh, it's Charles who's done it, not because he's my dodgy mate or I'm his dodgy mate.
Yes, worth remembering this is Epstein's thoughts or beliefs and mentions Charles, does not say it was Prince Charles as he would have been known at the time. But what happened in 2011 was obviously brought up in the Commons yesterday, not least by Chris Bryant, who revealed he'd spoken out at the time about Prince Andrew's relations with, for example, Saif Gaddafi. We know that not only was the image of Epstein and Andrew in New York revealed, I think it was December 2010. Also, in February 2011, that image that has become so iconic with Virginia Roberts-Giuffre and Prince Andrew was also revealed by the Daily Mail, who had gone to Australia to track her down. So there was a lot happening in 2011, and much of this was raised in the Commons again yesterday.
Yes, and I think yesterday will go down as a key turning point in our parliamentary history. And while the Speaker made clear that the waiving of the convention that's been in place since 1868 that holds that MPs may not reflect on, let alone criticise, members of the royal family, even though the Speaker made clear that that was being waived only in regard to Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, because he is no longer a member of the royal family insofar as sort of holding a title, I don't think, you can put the genie back in the bottle. I think there will be, going forward, a lot more irreverence, a lot more demand for scrutiny of all the royals, particularly when it comes to taxpayer-funded activities by them. As many MPs made clear yesterday, it was that undue deference, those archaic rules that probably prevented a lot of the activities we're learning about regarding Andrew now coming to light before now.
But it was, of course, a kind of punishment kicking of Andrew, because as far as we can tell, the reason why the police are involved is to do with the Epstein files, whereas most of what the MPs had to say yesterday was about Andrew's behaviour, meeting politicians as a trade envoy and all the rest of that. And today we've had the Chancellor of the Exchequer saying, well, if he was spending too much money on expenses as a trade envoy, he should repay it. But it's far from clear at this stage that any of that will, that he'll be held to account for any of that. I mean, the immediate threat to him, as indeed it is to Peter Mandelson, is the relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, just a reminder, of course, that Prince Andrew has denied any wrongdoing, and that story, those comments by the Chancellor that you mentioned, makes the front page of the Eye as well. Reeves Andrew must pay back any misused taxpayer money, the story that Adam was referring to there. Full look at the newspapers, of course, coming up for you at 10:30 this hour. Well, next tonight, the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has revealed that he tipped off police, saying it was him who'd received information that Lord Mandelson could pose a flight risk. The former British ambassador to the US was questioned on suspicion of misconduct in public office, but his lawyers say claims that he was going to run away are baseless, and he denies wrongdoing. Here's what Sir Lindsay told MPs today.
Members will be aware of comments in the media regarding the arrest of Lord Mandelson. To prevent any inaccurate speculation, I'd like to confirm that upon receipt of information that I felt it was relevant, I passed this on to the Metropolitan Police in good faith, as is my duty and responsibility. It is regrettable this rapidly ended in the media. As this is a live investigation, members will understand that it would not be appropriate to make any further comment, and I'd like to caution members from doing so.
Well, tonight, police apologised to Sir Lindsay. Let's take a look at what they said. The Met has apologised to the Speaker of the House of Commons this afternoon for inadvertently revealing information during an investigation into allegations of misconduct in public office. Adam, so many questions. First of all, what was Sir Lindsay doing in the British Virgin Islands? Who would he have spoken to? And how does this reflect on the police?
Well, to deal with the last question first, I mean, this is Keystone Cops stuff. I mean, one really does have to wonder if the Metropolitan Police are up to pursuing this international inquiry when they arrested Peter Mandelson, which they could have done off their own bat, but they apparently needed the claim that he was a flight risk to do it. But having arrested him, they then told his high-priced solicitors, Mishcon de Rere, why they'd arrested him, saying that they'd got a tip-off, and then they didn't know who'd given them the tip-off. They described him as the Lord Speaker, who's someone completely different, rather than Lindsay Hoyle, who's the Common Speaker. So, you know, one really does get the impression that these people don't know what they're doing. As far as Lindsay Hoyle, I don't think, although I always see him as a slightly comic figure, I have to say, but I don't think one can blame him for what he's done. He's done the right thing. There is a great kind of fraternity of speakers of parliaments who are always entertaining each other. On this occasion, he was in the British Virgin Islands because it was the 75th anniversary of the British Virgin Islands Assembly. I mean, who knew they had one? But anyway, that's why he's there. And he met the important people in the British Virgin Islands. I don't know whether it's a governor or a governor-general or something. So I think one can assume that they have said something about Peter Mandelson possibly coming to the British Virgin Islands. You know, that was a good source for him. He then passed it on to the police with no expectation at all that he would be dobbed in by the police's clumsiness as the person who supplied it. The only thing I would say is I think the fact that he was told that, believed it and passed it on gives you a firm insight into the habit of mind of senior Labour Party figures. Of course, he's not Labour Party anymore, but he was, in as much as they are absolutely determined that this is going to be pinned on Peter Mandelson as a bad apple rather than a wider criticism of the Labour Party.
Yes, and Mandelson's lawyers, we know, say those claims about fleeing are baseless. At the very least, he'd miss his dog. He, of course, denies allegations as well into this. Was it overreach, do you think, by Sir Lindsay Hoyle? And, you know, did Kemi Badenoch try and land any blows on this? Because this was the first opportunity, of course, in the Commons today for her to raise it since all of this has happened.
Well, look, I think Sir Lindsay Hoyle, it was incumbent upon him to pass this on to the police, given he'd received it from a credible source. Obviously, he didn't expect, you know, to be dobbed in for dobbing in someone else. He clearly just wanted to sort of get it off his desk once it had arrived. And speaking to people familiar with what happened, I'm told that he had met with police officers and Cabinet Office officials on Monday in order to discuss the release of documents to do with Peter Mandelson's appointment as ambassador. And it was during the course of that meeting, he sort of said in an almost informal way, you know, I think I need to pass on this information to you, as I understand it. So I think he didn't expect to be unmasked, and obviously had to go forward and own up and say it was him after, as Adam pointed out, the police garbled the information in passing it on and claimed it was the Lord Speaker. So the wrong person was being fingered for it. I think for me, in terms of the takeaways from PMQs today, it was Kemi Badenoch's rather eyebrow-raising language about, you know, paedophile apologists in the Commons that I thought was surprising in the robustness of her tone there. And I've spoken to a lot of people this afternoon who think, including on her own side, who think that that might have gone a bit too far.
OK, fascinating.
And just on your point of did Kemi Badenoch raise it, Speaker made it very clear at the start of business when he made that statement. Yeah. He said, I'll be saying nothing more and we're not going to discuss it. So she would have been going against the Speaker to have done it.
OK, interesting. Well, more politics now, because it is, of course, the eve of a big day tomorrow. We will see the Gortonham-Denton by-election in Greater Manchester, the first real electoral test of the year. It has been a Labour stronghold for decades, but Sir Keir Starmer's party is being squeezed by both Reform and the Greens. Have a look at this, then, from our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates.
180-mile trek north from Westminster. Party leaders and cabinet ministers have been out in force, touring the streets of one South Manchester suburb.
Chaotic.
You only get all these here when a by-election really matters. It's been Labour round here for almost a century, but is voters moving from the centre and an increasingly divided constituency The reason some are less willing to engage.
Excuse me, madam, can I talk to you about the election? Can we talk to you about the election?
Sorry.
Can we talk to you about the election?
Oh, sorry.
But those that did chat were angry.
I've never not voted before, ever, but really disillusioned this time.
I voted, well, at first I voted for Labour, but then obviously, you know, things change.
Green,
And why is that?
because of Palestine.
Labour will win, inshallah. Why not?
For many years, the Labour name was enough to unite the disparate forces round here. But is this still true?
Boulton and Denton is a constituency split in half. Look at this. In Boulton, in the west, there are more ethnic minority voters. To the east, in Denton, there are more white voters and, look at this, voters over 60. But here's the thing. There are twice as many voters in Boulton as there are in Denton, making it a bigger challenge for reform.
We did find passion for reform in this pub.
Could you have poured that perfect, isn't it?
Watching United play.
I'm not a racist person or nothing like that, but I think it's getting a bit out of control, the country that I live in, that I was brought up in.
The country's going down the drain, it's as simple as that.
What do you want politicians to sort?
Well, get out of the bubble and see what the real world's like. They keep telling us that the cost of living's not going up. Well, everybody knows it is. You only have to go in the supermarket to find that out.
The question asked on the other side of the room is which party is best placed to beat Reform UK?
I'd vote for Labour if it meant, if I thought that was the solid vote to stop reform getting in, I'd vote Labour.
Do you think the Greens have a serious and realistic chance of winning on Thursday?
Yes, I think they've really galvanised a vote on the left side of politics in this country, one that is more about humanity and common decency.
If Andy Burnham had been the Labour candidate, would that have made a difference?
I'd have voted for it. Definitely.
In this central Manchester Convention Centre, we will get the by-election result in the early hours of Friday morning, and it will be read as a verdict on the Prime Minister. He was the person that blocked a standout Labour candidate, Andy Burnham, so voters will be going to the polls on the basis of his record instead. Is Keir Starmer the right person to navigate this era of three-party politics?
This dance studio gearing up for polling day, a by-election causing disruption here as well as in Westminster.
So the council have just dropped this off this afternoon. We lift all of the mats and turn it into a voting station.
The result, a sign of whether there's more turmoil to come. Sam Coates, Sky News, Boulton and Denton.
Well, this is fascinating on so many levels. One, it's a proper three-way split. Two, it's turned into a proper street fight. And three, geographically, it's a kind of bonkers constituency, isn't it?
Well, I think that's right. And I think whatever the results tomorrow, it's going to be very interesting. To my mind, particularly if the Green Party pip it or get enough votes to allow Reform to win, I think that just blows a massive hole in Labour's whole strategy in running after Reform, trying to sort of attack Reform. If there appeals to other broadly left-leaning voters that if you vote for another left-wing party, it allows a right-wing party in, if that's shown to not hold water with voters, I think that's going to be a massive problem for Starmer.
Yeah. Well, Starmer was talking about attacking the two other parties who are in this fight in Prime Minister's Questions today, almost painting a dystopian picture of the Greens and their ambition to, you know, relieve rules on drugs and, you know, racist slurs against Reform. So he's got skin in the game quite clearly here, hasn't it? Does it matter who wins? And does it show that actually a progressive coalition could beat Reform in the future if you included the Lib Dems, for something I know the Daily Mail tonight has called a hellish troika, in fact, but there we are. So, you know, where do you see this politically, Adam?
Yes, I think it does matter, and there are three possible outcomes. One, remember, this has been the sixth safest Labour seat. Labour ought to win it, and there's still a chance that it could come through, and certainly we saw Keir Starmer today and other ministers trying to say, look, we are handling the economy right, things are getting better, that could work. So it is a possibility, I think, particularly since it's a sort of constituency where turnout's quite low, it's possible that Labour could win. If the Greens win, Lucy's just laid out, I mean, that's very, very serious because that really says there's a battle for who is the party on the left. It's also serious because of this whole question of Labour's relationship with some elements of the Muslim vote, which has already cost them at the general election with independent Muslim MPs being elected, and the Greens have gone very, very heavily identifying with that section of the community. But then the other thing, of course, is reform. I mean, if Reform win this, it will be a massive story for them. And also, if they don't, it will be a severe knockback. So you know, everyone's got skin in the game in this one.
And are you going to call it? Who do you think is going to win?
I don't know. I mean, the opinion polls say it's really neck and neck within the margin of error.
28, 27 we saw yesterday from Opinion. And are you going to call it?
No, I'm not going to be held hostage to fortune. But what I might bet on is that if it's really that close, we could see one or more recounts. So it could be quite a late result tomorrow. That would be my bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go on a long time.
OK, John Craig, Beth Rigby, Sam Coates, Up All Night with Jonathan Samuels tomorrow. This time, obviously, we'll be talking about it after polls close and our special programme at midnight tomorrow night. Well, on screen, let's just show you the full list of who is running in the Boulton and Denton by-election. Well, let's move on. Sky News has revealed that Russian tankers are passing through British waters in direct defiance of Western sanctions. Dozens of vessels move through the English Channel every month, allowing the oil revenues that fund Russia's war in Ukraine to keep flowing. Well, our business and economics editor, Paul Kelso, has been tracking them.
These are the secret weapons in Russia's war on Ukraine, hiding in plain sight. We've been tracking sanctioned tankers carrying the oil that funds the Kremlin to intercept them here, less than 10 miles from Dover. This is the Shadow Fleet on our shores.
So that's us, and we're heading. That's it. So that's us in the top corner, and we're heading into the shipping lane now.
We've been tracking 3 tankers for days to intercept them here.
There it is, there, Weigel.
That's the first of
This is the first of the Russian tankers, and that's coming down the shipping lane. We'll stop here near the sandbank, and then it'll come past us.
Right on schedule, the first comes into range.
So this is the Rigel. It's part of the Shadow tanker fleet. It's come from Primorsk in the Baltic, a Russian port loaded with about 1 million barrels of oil. That's worth $55 million, roughly, at today's prices. It's sailing under a Cameroon flag, but it's sanctioned by the UK, the EU and other countries because they believe it is essentially funding Russia's war in Ukraine. The proceeds of that cargo ultimately will flow back to Moscow.
The Rigel is one of 3 tankers we've been tracking since early February, each sailing under a different flag and loaded at different Baltic ports, but all carrying Russian oil through the Straits of Dover.
French Navy! French Navy!
In January, French special forces seized a tanker sailing from Russia in the Mediterranean, and US forces have seized at least 7 since its crackdown on Venezuela. But despite the almost daily passage of sanctions ships through the Channel, including this, the Kusai, British intervention has largely involved checking documents.
This is a message from the United Kingdom's Maritime and Coast Guard Agency.
We overhear a message to its captain from the Coast Guard. They doubt the ship has valid insurance and want proof.
Please email with a copy of your civil liability certificate and or blue card within 24 hours of this request.
The Ministry of Defence says this is part of its robust response to Russia, but with around 800 vessels in the Shadow Fleet, pressure is growing for direct action.
Britain and its allies, we won't do this alone, we'll do it particularly with the Dutch and the Danes and the Norwegians and the seagoing nations of Northern Europe. They together, I think, will get much tougher with these Russian ships, even if they're escorted. And when that happens, I think we're heading probably sometime this year for some sort of militarised confrontation at sea.
The UK government says deterring, disrupting and degrading the Russian Shadow Fleet is a priority. But for now, the oil that greases Russia's war machine continues to flow, not in the shadows, but under our nose. Paul Kelso, Sky News in the English Channel.
specialist US Coast Guard forces landing on vessels off the coast of Venezuela, you know, fully kitted out. And there we are, politely asking for verification of insurance to a sanctioned vessel, you know, floating just off our shores. When are we going to get real?
Well, look, we have seen the UK military starting to take part in operations against Russia's shadow fleet to stop the use of oil propping up its economy. I think there has been concern by the UK up till now that, of course, if the UK starts boarding Russian ships, we might start to see Russia boarding, you know, UK and other allies' commercial ships, and that could lead to some kind of clogging up of commercial shipping. So there's been a lot of caution around this, but there has been a change in sentiment in recent months, I think very much led by the French, to do more to sort of board these ships and show Russia this isn't going to pass anymore.
Yes, and we heard that warning, Professor Michael Clark, suggesting that the maritime nations of northwest Europe could ultimately join forces and we could see potentially a military confrontation. Is that something that we should be doing? There's tens of millions of pounds worth of Russian oil floating past the Straits of Dover.
Well, there's always the question of capability. I mean, the other issue in the oil trade, which is undoubtedly what is keeping Russia afloat, is the refineries. I mean, Sir William Browder, for example, says that there are 6 refineries which are mainly outside Russia, which are keeping the Russian economy going. And if those were sanctioned, then the Russian economy would grind to a halt. But, and this is a big point, who is Russia's main client? China. And China is buying 40% of the oil and is therefore basically funding the war machine in Ukraine, which is keeping it going. And do we want to take on the Chinese?
Brilliant reporting from Paul Kelso and his team. I urge you to watch the longer version of that. It's really, really fascinating.
The best bit, I bet they were really wetting themselves when they were asked to produce their insurance documents within 24 hours.
Precisely. Coming up next, we will be taking a full look at tomorrow's newspapers. Don't go away.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what? Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Well, time now to see what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Let us start with analysis appearing in The Times, which says the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein used the UK as a hub to traffic women up until a month before his arrest in 2019. The eye leads with what they say is an exclusive reporting on the Chancellor Rachel Reeves calling for Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor to reimburse the public purse if he's found guilty of misusing funds. The Daily Mail's front reports on the Met Police apologising for revealing Common Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle as the source of a tip that Peter Mandelson planned to flee to the British Virgin Islands. The Guardian's front leads on hospital cover-ups and falsified medical records in a damning report into NHS maternity care. Staying with health, The Telegraph carries a statement from an ex-Tory minister condemning the doubling of NHS spending as having no impact on the health service. The Mirror looks ahead to tomorrow's by-election in Gorton and Denton. The Daily Express leads on another exclusive as MPs call for France to no longer receive money from the UK until it stops small boat crossing the Channel. On the Metro's front page, police discover a huge cannabis farm hidden in a former casino in Northampton. And Strictly star Pete Wicks fears gorillas may one day take over the world. The Daily Star's headline, "Gorillas, get on my Wicks." So let's start with The Times, shall we? What they say is an expose with their analysis, Adam, of booking records, fuel receipts and flight logs disclosed in the Epstein files, which show, the paper says, the paedophile financier flew in and out of Britain by private jet more than 60 times, including right up until his arrest in late 2019.
Yes, and as they say in this report, this is similar to the sort of work that the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown has been doing, who has sent dossiers, I think, to 9 police forces. And what this really comes down to is that there were very poor records kept of people flying in and out of Britain on private planes as to who was on board and where they'd come from and where they were going to. And even although some private planes were actually using not just civil airports, but actually RAF bases to fly into. So what's happened is people have gone back into the Epstein files and they've found descriptions of flights which he took. And it's been revealed, as Gordon Brown has been alleging, that according to that paper trail, there were women being trafficked on those planes, because we know that he was getting women from Eastern Europe and from a model agency in Paris and elsewhere coming through Britain. What I'm not entirely clear of is whether there are either any reliable records or what specific crime has been committed in British law with these people coming in transit. And of course, there are suggestions that on occasions, private planes flew in women who then met up with former Prince Andrew.
Indeed. Well, sorry, apologies, my fault. It said as late as 2019, not up to late 2019. Gordon Brown has asked 6 police forces, including the Met, to examine whether Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor used RAF bases to make trips. He's passed a dossier of evidence relating to flights in and out of the UK to 6 police forces. So he's really pushing this. Today we heard, should there be a public inquiry about this? You know, many things will be hidden behind the fact there's a criminal investigation underway. But do you think ultimately there will be an inquiry into what we're beginning to read in the Epstein files?
I think there will be inquiries of some sort, whether it's a public inquiry or a judge-led inquiry or some slightly smaller in scope investigations launched by select committees, I think remains to be seen. But certainly there is no sense of satisfaction so far among MPs, not to say the public, with the level of scrutiny and what the government has committed to publish so far. And I thought that was very striking in the Commons yesterday, in that motion brought forward by the Lib Dems forcing the government to publish some of the documentation around Andrew's appointment as trade envoy in 2001. That many MPs were saying, it needs to go wider than that. Rachel Maskell, a Labour MP, said we need to get the Department for Transport involved, the Ministry of Defence. They need to make clear who was using their air bases or RAF jets. We need to see, logs and passenger manifests. So kind of driving at this issue. I think whatever form it ends up in, people want there to be complete transparency about all the many strands that are beginning to unravel here.
And Adam, you were saying earlier that really the Labour Party, in terms of Mandelson at least, want to make sure that any errors that were caused, lay at his door. And Rachel Reeves has been speaking about this in terms of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as well, about, tracking the money. Reminder that both deny any wrongdoing at this point. But what's the eye had to say about this?
Well, this is a comment by the Chancellor saying that if he should reimburse the public if he's found to have misused funds, amidst allegations of profligate spending. Now, again, one can entirely sympathise with that sentiment, but at the time, his expenses were signed off, even if they were considered to be excessive, but they were signed off. And in fact, we know that some ambassadors and others who dealt with him just said, we think this is a bit excessive, but in the end, they were waved through. So again, I find it difficult to sort of relitigate whether he should have taken a helicopter and actually, well, if he did and he shouldn't have done, then you owe us another couple of £1,000 before you get into the question of whether he has the money or whatever.
Yeah, retrospective glasses often deliver different results, don't they? Let's move on to a couple of different reports. First of all, The Guardian, and this is the government-commissioned report into maternity care carried out by Valerie Amos. The Guardian reports on this, another newspaper does too. What has it had to say, and how serious does it look for the way maternity services are running in this country?
Really shocking findings in this interim report by Valerie Amos, the peer and former Labour cabinet minister. She's found that hospitals that cause harm and injury to women and babies during childbirth often resort to cover-ups. They have falsified medical records and denied bereaved parents answers. There's another headline of this on The Times too, saying that the NHS has been incentivised to wrongly record babies' deaths as stillborn, falsely recording that babies were born dead rather than dying in the aftermath of birth due to malpractice by the NHS.
Because they avoid a coroner's inquest in that case, so the coroner can't look into stillborn deaths. Whereas if, obviously, an infant dies shortly afterwards, there would be an inquest.
So very shocking indeed. It does also point out that the NHS is facing increasingly tough problems because women are getting older, and that leads to complications in pregnancy and childbirth, and an increase in obesity in pregnant women also has corollary effects that are making care more difficult for the health system. But I hope that this report will be the wake-up call that's needed. I had a baby last year. Many of my friends are having children at the moment. And some of the reports I've heard, just anecdotally in my friendship set, have really shocked me.
And this inquiry by Valerie Amos was set up by Wes Streeting and the Prime Minister because of various scandals in hospitals. And the problem is that this country's record in maternal and neonatal care in terms of poor outcomes is much worse than equivalent health services. So
other countries offer late scans, which we don't. We still measure a stomach to see how big the baby is, and I mean all sorts of things. We've done a lot of work on this as well, and only last month did a special programme hearing from so many women. The report also, though, does say that an increase in obesity during pregnancy, a rise in older mothers has complicated the situation. We know an over-attachment to natural births, reducing medical intervention has led to difficulties elsewhere as well. And obviously, money is tricky. NHS trusts continued to provide poor care because they were doing too little to improve its quality and safety as a result of not learning lessons. So not learning lessons as well is another issue. Root and branch look at at the whole thing. In the meantime, the Daily Telegraph says that doubling of NHS cash for the NHS had no impact. This is a Conservative minister under Boris Johnson saying this, Adam.
Yeah, this is James Bethell, the hereditary peer who was a health minister. You may remember him as one of the ones who lost his phone with key messages about COVID. But nonetheless, I think his record has generally been quite respected. And this is really the problem, not just in obstetrics, but across the NHS, that more money has gone in, but productivity and outcomes have not improved. And this is what he's putting his finger on. And this is true across the health service, both hospitals and general practice. An interesting comment, particularly since, with the electorate generally, saying I'm going to put more money into health service tends to be a popular...
A big tick.
Tick.
Yeah. But go on. I was just going to say that the Telegraph says this is a joint interview with Professor Sir Jonathan Van Tam, that we remember from COVID days, the former Deputy Chief Medical Officer, who's also warned of a demographic time bomb, which the health service was failing to address. And this is always, I mean, in terms of the maths of it, this is fundamentally the problem, is it not? That we can't afford our older generations. And anyway, but I interrupted you.
No, I think that's right. An ageing population is making it harder and much more expensive. And we're seeing this renaissance in the production or discovery of new drugs, aided by AI and all sorts of fantastical ways of mapping proteins and working out how to cure ailments and diseases. So, again, costs a lot more money, these sophisticated drugs. I think we have to just step back slightly and see this comment by James Bethell as being... his analysis and overall conclusion. There aren't many metrics brought to bear, at least in this article, sort of proving his point. They do say that average lifespan at birth remains the same for men and women now as it did in 2009, so people are not living longer. It also doesn't, to my mind, massively grapple with the fact that, yes, the money going into the health service doubled by 100 billion since 2017, but of course, in the last 17 years. But of course, during that time, COVID also, took a huge, massive cash injection and had to be deployed not particularly efficiently necessarily, but in an emergency crisis scenario.
Yes, we remember the Nightingale hospitals. Just very quickly as well, they say that the health of the UK is showing signs of worsening. Today's pensioners can expect to spend about a decade in ill health, but that figure is expected to double for those born now without a gain in life expectancy. So it's getting more miserable even if you're born now.
Well, yes, and it's true, I think, that life expectancy has plateaued. It's not getting longer. But, I mean, there is sort of one little paragraph of hope here at the end, the government spokesman saying that the 10-year plan is trying to move towards prevention. And this, is going to be crucial in getting on top of this. And obviously the use of anti-obesity drugs by the NHS may be the sort of problems we've been talking about with heavier mothers. But in a whole, and, trying to use vaccination against measles and all the rest of it, there is a hope that we'll be healthier before we need medical interventions.
OK. Just very quickly, straight at the bottom of the front page of The Guardian, Iran entering a critical phase of talks with the US on its nuclear programme.
Well, everyone's braced, aren't they, since Donald Trump sent that armada to the region. A really key day for these talks tomorrow. And I think what everyone's waiting to discover is whether three of the preconditions that Iran has set out for doing a deal with the US, which Iran claims have been sort of informally signed off by Steve Witkoff, Trump's envoy to the Middle East, and Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, whether the president himself is willing to agree to those three conditions. If not, this might yet all fall apart.
OK, quick word on the Sussexes. Adam, if I can divert your attention. The Sussexes to help support refugees with Jordan visit. Effectively, they're going from expensive jam to a jam-packed tour of Jordan, meeting key figures from the World Health Organization, the World Central Kitchen, providing food relief for Gaza. Clearly, Jordan's got a huge number of refugees in there, but I mean, why? Why are they going?
Well, I don't know if there's coordination with Buckingham Palace, but this, the Times is calling it not the royal tour. I mean, it looks like a royal tour. They are doing good works. We saw a strong message from the Duke of Sussex, Harry, yesterday on Ukraine. They're going... this visit to a Jordanian camp was under the auspices of the World Health Organization. It looks a little bit to me as if the Sussexes are coming into bat to help out the royal family. But, I mean, I could have got it completely wrong, and they may be just trying to show that there is an alternative.
Very interesting. OK. Lots more of the papers coming up later in the programme. Next, though, how England is losing the fight against fly tippers.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent.
It takes 60 minutes to cross the Irish Sea. It took the British monarchy a century.
I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
The political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
If there's anyone who might know how to fix Northern Ireland's devolved government, it's the American architect.
Changes in circumstance require changes in approach.
The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland.
I confirm that I am willing to take up the office of First Minister. My election to the post of First Minister demonstrates the change that's happening on this island.
Catholics and Protestants on different sides, now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19 and end up in hospital, religion's nothing.
People here are adept at finding hope amid adversity. That's the spirit of a place that punches way above its weight.
We help you understand the world with us. A toxic blue-green algae now poisoning Lough Neagh. It's breaking your heart what has happened here.
It is.
This is a vital resource, a national treasure, now fighting for its very life. They are effectively surrounded by Northern Ireland, and that makes this the most unlikely of international frontiers.
If there's a hard border, I think it'll cripple the country.
Winter is coming. Welcome to Winterfell. It's an iconic location in this globally acclaimed drama. Ophelia was the most powerful hurricane this far east in the Atlantic on record. Sky News, the full story first.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand,
Wow.
here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's running out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Now, there's been a sharp increase in fly tipping in England last year. New data shows more than 1.2 million incidents were dealt with by local authorities, and that's in England alone. Our climate reporter, Victoria Seabrook, has more.
If you fly tip, this is what the government wants you to think will happen. This van was caught in Brent and now is being crushed. The government is encouraging councils to seize more vehicles caught in the act. But is it enough? New figures reveal fly tipping last year jumped to 1.26 million cases, the highest on recent records. And even those figures are an underestimate because they only include cases on public land, meaning tips on farms and elsewhere go unreported. And while many cases are investigated, very few lead to penalties like fines or prosecution. Brent was once dubbed the fly-tipping capital of England after recording 35,000 incidents in a single year. And it's still easy to see why.
See all this rubbish all over the place, people throwing their old mattresses, and it's an eyesore. I'm embarrassed to get people to come and visit me.
As the council tries to reclaim the streets, we joined its enforcement officers on the hunt for clues about where the rubbish came from.
You can clearly see there was a delivery label inside. Unfortunately, look at what people do just to take it off.
Her luck shifts in the next street.
And this time we do have an address.
Many people don't realise that the onus is on them to check that whoever they're paying to take away their waste has a licence.
Driving around, seeing waste in front of someone's garden, for example, they would go, knock on the door and offer to pick up the waste for a way lower price. So people jump at the occasion of paying less money. They will be the ones, unfortunately, who will get the fixed penalty notice.
And if you felt like England is just, well, a bit rubbish at tackling this, you're not alone.
That is the problem. There's no jeopardy. And, you know, we see examples all the time, to be honest, people who clearly are doing it on multiple, but even if they get caught, they get a £1,000 fine at most. For them, that's just the cost of business. You know, they'll make that up in a day and a half or something like that at most. So they'll just go out and they'll go and do it again. That's the problem. There needs to be a sense of real risk and jeopardy. And at the moment, the deterrents just aren't there. Councils are not enforcing the law in the way they should be doing.
The government says it is cracking down on waste crime, boosting powers and funding. But as long as the fly-tipping figures go in the wrong direction, it is the public paying to clean up the mess. Victoria Seabrook, Sky News.
Well, this makes people so cross, doesn't it? Fly tipping most commonly occurs on pavements and roads. People just emptying their boot. A third comes from the size of a van. Another, nearly a third, just the size of a car boot. People are just chucking it rather than going to the tip, Adam.
Yeah, they're also saying that the majority of it is actually domestic waste. So it's individuals rather than builders or whatever. Yeah. But, I mean, we all know it's horrible. I just wonder, why is it happening?
Well, because we know that local authorities now charge you to get rid of some of your waste, or you have to prove you live in the local authority area in order to take your stuff.
Because, I mean, it oughtn't to be beyond the capacity to actually organise a system so that people know where they go and they can dump stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I see it all the time. I mean, I live in a green area where stuff is dumped all the time. I also see vans because I drive home late at night. My family saw literal fly tipping happen last month and a lot of asbestos, which then takes weeks to be cleared up because you need specialist teams, and there are not many specialist teams who can clear up asbestos.
So in other words, the product of this is the squeeze on councils who are therefore charging or closing recycling centres. Yeah. So, you know...
But it's also cyclical, isn't it? Because once you start to destroy green space or whatever, then people think, well, it's ruined anyway, and they're emboldened to go and do the same, and pride in communities is just degraded.
No, it's a classic equal and opposite reaction. When you bring in a measure, you have a response to it, and that is what we're seeing on the roads. The problem is, of course, that the number of enforcement actions by councils was up 8%, the number of fixed penalty notices issued was up 9%, the total number of court fines was down 9%. Another problem of our courts, which is another story for today, is it not? So actions being taken, but no follow-through, effectively, which is the tricky bit. The number of fly-tipping cases councils had to deal with last year jumped nearly 10% on the previous year. You wonder if it's an economic squeeze as well, that people can't afford to pay for the price at their local authority skip, Adam. It's like a shoplifting effect, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and it's clearly a problem. I have to say, I'm not sure that, given the scale of the problem, that increasing penalties, as that gentleman was suggesting in the report, will necessarily have much effect.
Lucy, Adam, stay there. Let's take a look now at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the mild theme, sure you noticed it today, will continue this week with rain and strong winds, though, at times. Many places will start mild and dry tomorrow, but the blustery north and west will see a few showers. More general rain will affect the west of Ireland. That rain will mostly clear across Ireland and Northern Ireland through the morning to affect western Scotland, northwest England and West Wales. Elsewhere, largely dry. Bright spells. Northern and central parts, though, can expect a few showers. It will be windy and mild. Temperatures will look lower, though, than today's. Northern Britain will see rain clearing through the morning, leaving showers over Scotland, while more of Wales and southwest England will turn wet. Central England will see patchy rain too, but the southeast should stay dry. Ireland and Northern Ireland look drier and brighter. Friday will bring showers or longer spells of rain. The south will remain mild, but it will be windy there.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, in the next hour of the wrap, our trawl of the Epstein files reveals new claims about why Andrew lost his role as the UK's trade envoy. Back in a moment.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Tonight on The Wrap, Jeffrey Epstein's claims about why former Prince Andrew lost his job as trade envoy. Our analysis of the Epstein files reveals that on the day Andrew stepped back from the role, Epstein told an associate it was Charles's doing. Also tonight.
Upon receipt of information that I felt it was relevant, I passed this on to the Metropolitan Police in good faith.
The Commons Speaker reveals that he told police he'd received information that Lord Mandelson could be a flight risk. Detectives have tonight apologised to the Speaker for what they described as inadvertently revealing information. Plus, we report from Gorton and Denton as voters prepare to go to the polls in one of the most significant by-elections in years. Can Labour hang on to a traditional stronghold in the face of challenges from Reform and the Greens? And we track oil tankers in the English Channel as they transport sanctioned Russian oil just miles from British shores. Well, we'll discuss today's biggest stories with Adam Boulton and Lucy Fisher, plus a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including the Chancellor on Andrew, that admission from the Commons Speaker, and the state of maternity care in this country. Well, hello, good evening. Good evening too to Lucy and Adam. We begin tonight with an email that Sky News has uncovered in the Epstein files, in which Jeffrey Epstein blames someone he names as Charles for Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor losing his job as UK trade envoy. Andrew served in the role for a decade until 2011. On Thursday of last week, Andrew was arrested over allegations that he shared sensitive information with Epstein during his work as the UK Special Representative on Trade and Investment. Andrew has, of course, denied wrongdoing. Well, as part of our investigation into the millions of documents released by US authorities, we found this email sent by Jeffrey Epstein to an associate on the day that Andrew lost his job. Epstein's associate says lots of TV coverage on PA and always big feature on you. Insane. Sky News believes PA refers to Prince Andrew. Well, in response, Epstein says, I assume he knows that this is Charles's doing. But let's bring in our guests tonight then, Adam Boulton and Lucy Fisher. Welcome to you. This is interesting, isn't it? And I know that the royals will want separation. If that Charles is indeed Prince Charles, as he was at the time, how does this reflect on him, do you think, at this critical time, 2011, when Andrew lost that job as trade envoy?
Well, up until recently, I think it would have been unhelpful, any idea of another familial rift between brothers in the royal family. As it happens, now there is so much heat on Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and, of course, a criminal investigation, which he denies wrongdoing. I think it could be helpful to King Charles III to show distance, show that he had some perception at the time that this wasn't right and wanted the role removed from Mountbatten-Windsor, as he's now known. Of course, by 2011, the time Andrew left the role, there was already a lot in the public domain about his links with Epstein, who had been convicted of soliciting prostitution from a minor in 2008. So it could yet be helpful for him. I would note that Sky News has also found a follow-up email, though, from Jeffrey Epstein, a communication between him and Ghislaine Maxwell, in which she says, you know, why has Andrew lost this, or been removed from this role? And Epstein gives a different answer to her, saying, I think he wants to start making money. So perhaps there's another sort of theory, or Epstein was just throwing out different theories to people.
And yet we heard in the Commons yesterday from people like Sir Chris Bryant, who had raised in 2011 his concerns about some of the associations that Andrew had with, for example, Saif Gaddafi, the son of the Libyan leader, and also a convicted Libyan gun smuggler. We know also in 2011 that critical photographs had begun emerging about Prince Andrew, as he was then, and his association with Epstein and some of the women who've been central to this.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, there's no evidence that Epstein is right. This is what he's telling his friend. And, of course, what he's doing is deflecting the blame from himself. I mean, actually, the reason why Andrew was got rid of as a trade envoy was because of, first of all, the photograph of him with Epstein in Central Park, and also the photograph that emerged of him with Virginia Giuffre and Ghislaine Maxwell. So what had done him in was his friendship with Epstein, who by that stage was a convicted sex offender. Epstein is sort of saying, oh, well, it's a conspiracy, it's Prince Charles, it's down to the rivalry and all the rest of it, whereas, actually there is a rather simpler explanation.
OK, well, a reminder that Prince Andrew has denied any wrongdoing. Makes the front pages, too, of tomorrow's newspapers, including an intervention, in fact, from the Chancellor in the Eye, suggesting that Andrew must pay back any misused taxpayer money if he is found guilty. We will bring you all of the front pages at hour, including that story. Well, next night, the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has revealed that he tipped off police that it was him who'd received information that Lord Mandelson could pose a flight risk. The former British ambassador to the US was questioned on suspicion of misconduct in public office. His lawyers, though, say that claims he was going to run away are baseless, and he denies wrongdoing. Here is what Sir Lindsay told MPs today.
Members will be aware of comments in the media regarding the arrest of Lord Mandelson. To prevent any inaccurate speculation, I'd like to confirm that upon receipt of information that I felt it was relevant, I passed this on to the Metropolitan Police in good faith, as is my duty and responsibility. It is regrettable this rapidly ended in the media. As this is a live investigation, members will understand that it would not be appropriate to make any further comment, and I'd like to caution members from doing so.
Well, tonight, police apologised to Sir Lindsay. Let's take a look at that quote. They said the Met has apologised to the Speaker of the House of Commons this afternoon for inadvertently revealing information during an investigation into the allegations of misconduct in public office. Bit of a dog's dinner, this, Adam.
Yes, it is. I mean, the front page of the Daily Mail describes it as a farce, but also asks, is the Prince of Darkness up to his old spin tricks? And the truth of the matter is that this has been a knockback for the police, who end up looking extremely incompetent. First of all, under pressure, presumably from Peter Mandelson's lawyers, Mishcon de Rea, they explained why they'd arrested him when there'd been a previous arrangement for him to go to a police station quietly. Well, police are entitled to arrest who they want, so they didn't need to offer an explanation, but they did. And they then said, well, this is because we thought you were a flight risk because we were tipped off to that effect. And then they went public to the lawyers as to who had tipped them off. But, it gets worse because they tipped them off that it was the wrong person. They said it was Michael Forsyth, the Lord Speaker, whereas we've just seen it was actually the Common Speaker. Now, the point is, these are the people who are supposed to be investigating a very serious potential international crime of misconduct in public life, yet they don't appear to know what they're doing or how to proceed. And therefore, it is a victory to a certain extent for the Prince of Darkness that they've been intimidated and shown to be incompetent at this very, very early stage of the inquiry. I
mean, the Daily Mail, as you picked up on that one, police probe descends into farce, is their suggestion on this. Do you think actually, Lord Mandelson's, I know you call them expensive lawyers all the time, were right to actually say, hang on a minute, I was never going to go anywhere?
Well, look, I think the too long didn't read here is Hoyle dobbed in Mandelson, Met dobbed in Hoyle. I think it's right, given they knew the information just tactically from the lawyer's perspective, to try and make a song and dance of this and say, this is outrageous. It's a complete fiction, as they termed it, that Peter Mandelson has any intention of fleeing abroad and therefore he shouldn't have been arrested in this way. And there is a marked contrast, isn't there, between the way that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, with his arrest, was picked up early in the morning, whereas Peter Mandelson was arrested late afternoon, spent 9 hours in a police station. It wasn't till sort of about, I think, 1, 2 a.m. that he was finally released. It looked a lot more disorganised by the Met.
Well, that's because, unlike Prince Andrew, or former Prince Andrew, he'd already done a deal to go in March privately under caution to talk to them, which is obviously why he was upset to be arrested unexpectedly. But, I mean, again, that's interesting because it shows that Mandelson, presumably through his lawyers, was already doing deals with the police as to how he'd give evidence. Whereas, I mean, did the Thames Valley Police offer the same thing to Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew? We don't know. Or maybe he turned it down. I don't know.
There's always so much we don't know, isn't there? But we do know that this was the first opportunity for the opposition to raise this at Prime Minister's questions. Take a look.
A 180-mile trek north from Westminster. Party leaders and cabinet ministers have been out in force, touring the streets of one South Manchester suburb.
Chaotic.
You only get all these here when a by-election really matters. It's been Labour around here for almost a century, but is voters moving from the centre and an increasingly divided constituency the reason some are less willing to engage? Excuse me, madam, can I talk to you about the election? Can we talk to you about the election?
Sorry.
Can we talk to you about the election?
Oh, sorry.
But those that did chat were angry.
I've never not voted before, ever, but really disillusioned this time.
I voted, well, at first I voted for Labour, but then obviously, things change.
Green.
And why is that?
Because of Palestine.
Labour will win, inshallah. Why not?
For many years, the Labour name was enough to unite the disparate forces round here. But is this still true? Boulton and Denton is a constituency split in half. Look at this. In Boulton, in the west, there are more ethnic minority voters. To the east, in Denton, there are more white voters and, look at this, voters over 60. But here's the thing. There are twice as many voters in Boulton as there are in Denton, making it a bigger challenge for reform. We did find passion for reform in this pub.
Could you have poured that perfect, isn't it?
Watching United play.
I'm not a racist person or nothing like that, but I think it's getting a bit out of control, the country that I live in, that I was brought up in.
The country's going down the drain, it's as simple as that.
What do you want politicians to sort?
Well, get out of the bubble and see what the real world's like. They keep telling us that the cost of living's not going up. Well, everybody knows it is. You only have to go in the supermarket to find that out.
The question asked on the other side of the room is which party is best placed to beat Reform UK?
I'd vote for Labour if it meant, if I thought that was the solid vote to stop Reform getting in, I'd vote Labour.
Do you think the Greens have a serious and realistic chance of winning on Thursday?
Yes, I think they've really galvanised a vote on the left side of politics in this country, one that is more about humanity and common decency.
If Andy Burnham had been the Labour candidate, would that have made a difference?
I'd have voted for him, definitely.
In this central Manchester Convention Centre, we will get the by-election result in the early hours of Friday morning, and it will be read as a verdict on the Prime Minister. He was the person that blocked a standout Labour candidate, Andy Burnham, so voters will be going to the polls on the basis of his record instead. Is Keir Starmer the right person to navigate this era of three-party politics? This dance studio gearing up for polling day, a by-election causing disruption here as well as in Westminster.
So the council have just dropped this off this afternoon. We lift all of the mats and turn it into a voting station.
The result, a sign of whether there's more turmoil to come. Sam Coates, Sky News, Boulton and Denton.
Well, as you might have noticed, that was not Kemi Badenoch speaking in the Commons today. That was, in fact, our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, up in Boulton and Denton ahead of the by-election tomorrow. So this time tomorrow night, we'll certainly be talking about it. Results overnight. If it's close, there could be a recount. The latest polling, 27 by opinion yesterday. It really is a fascinating count, isn't it? Even though it's a bit of a strange constituency, a new constituency.
Well, that's in one way what makes it so interesting. There are key demographic splits. There's a sort of white working class constituency within it that, of course, Reform are seeking to gain the vote of. There are many people from a Muslim background and many students, which the Labour and the Green Party are battling for. And beyond that, it's just become so vicious, the briefing and counter-briefing. And I have to say, I love the high-flown rhetoric in the Mirror tomorrow in an op-ed by Starmer himself, in which he says, and I quote, "The stakes in politics have rarely been higher. It's less and less about left and right, more and more a battle for the soul of the nation." And he's really going hard and attacking the Green Party on their policy on decriminalising drugs and reform on what he sort of frames as a very toxic, divisive policies around immigration and inclusion in the UK. So
yes, there's the front page, actually. Don't let hate win. The double-page spread insides include, as you said, the opinion piece, which is written by Keir Starmer. He mentioned some of those elements in the comments today as well. One about the decriminalisation of drugs and also about the racist slurs connected to reform. It's a street fight, isn't it, this one?
Yeah, it is. And the Mirror's joined in, really. I mean, effectively, a Labour paper, as quite often on election day, it's really another election leaflet, effectively, for Vote Labour. Interesting that Keir Starmer has, after, I think, some consideration, gone to the constituency and is putting himself front and centre in this campaign, which some people were saying, given his own personal unpopularity, was a bit of a risk. But I've just been reading his piece that he's written for the Mirror. He says they're going to win. I mean, he says, of course, other parties will claim they can win. Don't be fooled. They can't. Only Labour has the reach across this entire constituency needed to defeat reform. Now, you know, those are words that this time tomorrow they could be coming back to haunt him.
Yeah. I mean, if you extrapolate to a general election, clearly by-elections are completely different. You've got the Greens and Labour taking each other's votes effectively. I know they're different parts of the left spectrum, and allowing possibly reform in. Now, at what point will you see, or could you see, a progressive alliance, which we've heard from over multiple election cycles now, something that the Daily Mail is tonight calling a hellish troika, in fact, which they're including the Lib Dems in this. But, you know, everyone talks about a sort of coalition of the Conservatives and Reform. Will there have to be some alignment if we're in such multi-party politics now, do you think? Or will they still each scrap for their own?
I think they'll scrap for their own. And in fact, I think the electorate is fairly sophisticated. It doesn't like the idea of voting for one party to get another sort of deal done over its head as a sort of a body politic. So I think that while we might see, indeed, depending on how the next election shakes down, deals done after any poll, I think it is actually very difficult for parties to make any agreement before then, because actually there's many on the sort of right wing of Labour supporters who would be horrified at sort of how much further to the left many of the Green Party's policies are. I mean,
interesting article in the Times today by Professor Vernon Bogdanoy, is probably our greatest constitutional expert at the moment, and he's actually saying this could be the end of politics as we've known it in this country, because you've got two parties that he describes as populist, even though one's on the left, the Greens, and one's on the right, Reform UK, potentially threatening in a first past the post system to overwhelm Labour and the Conservatives. And you know, if that does happen, that, you know, people are going to have to completely recalculate all their assumptions.
But the alternative scenario that Labour holds the seat tomorrow, I think will also be a very big moment and a damaging moment for reform. It will slightly puncture the sense that they've got all this momentum behind them.
I think
for the Greens as well, certainly.
I mean, but all of this has to be seen as a prelude to, I think it's 6 weeks' time, the local elections and the elections in Scotland and Wales. And certainly both the Greens and Reform will be desperate to win this seat, because that will give them the momentum and also a kind of message to the electorate that, look, we can win things, which could be a significant boost to them if they manage to win this by-election.
And a potential boost, obviously, for Keir Starmer, who only 2 weeks ago was hanging by, you know, his fingernails ahead of the May elections, which are also utterly critical. Honestly, there's so much to play for. Let's just show you, shall we, the full list of who is running in the Gorton and Denton by-election. And certainly tomorrow night, 10 o'clock, polls close. We'll hear from our political editor, Beth Rigby. John Craig is also there. Sam Coates here to talk about it. Special programme for you from midnight with Jonathan Samuels. It'll be a really fascinating contest. Well, coming up next, we have got a special report on sanctions busting Russian oil tankers, passing miles or just miles from the British coast, bringing extra income to help Moscow's war in Ukraine. That expose to come.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Now let's take you to Russian oil. Sky News has revealed that Russian tankers are passing through British waters in direct defiance of Western sanctions. Dozens of vessels move through the English Channel every month, allowing the oil revenues that fund Russia's war in Ukraine to keep flowing. Our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso has been tracking them.
These are the secret weapons in Russia's war on Ukraine, hiding in plain sight. We've been tracking sanctioned tankers carrying the oil that funds the Kremlin to intercept them here, less than 10 miles from Dover. This is the Shadow Fleet on our shores.
So that's us, and we're heading, that's it, so that's us in the top corner, and we're heading into the shipping lane now.
We've been tracking 3 tankers for days to intercept them here.
There it is there, Rigel.
That's the first of the
This is
tankers.
the first of the Russian tankers, and that's coming down the shipping lane. We'll stop here near the sandbank, and then it'll come past us.
Right on schedule, the first comes into range.
So this is the Rigel. It's part of the Shadow tanker fleet. It's come from Primorsk in the Baltic, a Russian port loaded with about 1 million barrels of oil. That's worth $55 million, roughly, at today's prices. It's sailing under a Cameroon flag, but it's sanctioned by the UK, the EU and other countries because they believe it is essentially funding Russia's war in Ukraine. The proceeds of that cargo ultimately will flow back to Moscow.
The Rigel is one of 3 tankers we've been tracking since early February, each sailing under a different flag and loaded at different Baltic ports, but all carrying Russian oil through the Straits of Dover.
French Navy! French Navy!
In January, French special forces seized a tanker sailing from Russia in the Mediterranean, and US forces have seized at least 7 since its crackdown on Venezuela. But despite the almost daily passage of sanctions ships through the Channel, including this, the Kusai, British intervention has largely involved checking documents.
This is a message from the United Kingdom's Maritime and Coast Guard Agency.
We overhear a message to its captain from the Coast Guard. They doubt the ship has valid insurance and want proof.
Please email with a copy of your civil liability certificate and or blue card within 24 hours of this request.
The Ministry of Defence says this is part of its robust response to Russia, but with around 800 vessels in the Shadow Fleet, pressure is growing for direct action.
Britain and its allies, we won't do this alone, we'll do it particularly with the Dutch and the Danes and the Norwegians and the seagoing nations of Northern Europe. They together, I think, will get much tougher with these Russian ships, even if they're escorted. And when that happens, I think we're heading probably sometime this year for some sort of militarised confrontation at sea.
The UK government says deterring, disrupting and degrading the Russian Shadow Fleet is a priority. But for now, the oil that greases Russia's war machine continues to flow, not in the shadows, but under our nose. Paul Kelso, Sky News in the English Channel.
Paul Kelso there. Well, it did not take long for MPs on the Business and Trade Committee to spot Paul's report.
We're in a situation where UK components are still turning up in drones, which are fired at the brave Ukrainians. Last year, we imported potentially billions of pounds of oil products made with Russian oil. And this afternoon, Sky News is reporting that we have tankers sailing through the English Channel with up to $100 million worth of oil on board. How are we still in a position to shut down all trade of any sorts, either directly or indirectly, with President Putin's war machine?
Well, first of all, let's just acknowledge that it's the 4th anniversary yesterday, and we introduced a new set of sanctions yesterday, which perhaps we'll come on to. It is true that the Russian bear is a wily fox, to mix my metaphors, in the sense that, of course, they have sought to evade all our sanctions at every step of the way. And we've had to make sure that we are constantly updating and bringing in new elements of that process.
It's not that wily, Adam. You can clearly see that these tankers are setting off from Russia, whatever flag they're flying.
Yes, indeed. And you know, Sky News has a long record on this. Ed Conway looking into the trade going through the stans around Russia.
With his expensive cars as well, he's done previously too, yeah.
I think we are now at the stage where we're going into the 5th year of the war in Ukraine. It appears to be a stalemate, and therefore I think there is now pressure on countries like the UK and others to look at their sanctions and as we were hearing in that report, possibly to intervene militarily to board ships.
I mean, the EU brought in, you know, its 20th round of sanctions, despite, as we know, Hungary, you know, not signing it off. But the sanctions aren't working. If all we're doing is saying, please show me your insurance.
No, absolutely. But what I'm saying is that there perhaps was an expectation. Oh, you know, it'll be settled by now, or, you know, Ukraine will be losing. And therefore people, you know, don't forget that there'll be commercial interests involved where this was going on. But now I think we've reached the point where it is a stalemate, and therefore there's increased talk about putting economic pressure on Russia, which of course is the one thing that Donald Trump doesn't want, looking not just at tankers, but also at refineries around the world.
Well, Professor Michael Clark, they're clearly suggesting that actually the, you know, northwestern maritime nations of Europe, you could see armed conflict. But we've seen what America can do, landing these highly trained US Coast Guard forces on Venezuelan vessels off the coast of Venezuela and taking them. So why are we letting these ships just meander past the UK through our waters?
Well, we have actually seen the UK be involved in allied operations to stop tankers or ships that are part of Russia's shadow fleet. That is a recent move, I think, reflecting the fact that sanctions have only gone so far and haven't failed to dent Russia's war economy sufficiently. It's also very knotty, isn't it? Because the oil is bought not only by the likes of China, but, you know, allies of the UK like India. It's been a very difficult thing for the UK and other Europeans in the US to sort of work out how to approach without having negative consequences on the world economy that would have, you know, a splashback on, you know, UK citizens, consumers, and the public finances here and elsewhere.
Well, certainly, you know, great reporting from Paul Kelso. We'll see what comes of that focus, certainly, and a longer piece available, which I urge you to watch too. It is 11:30. Let's take a look, shall we, at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, starting with this analysis in The Times, which says that the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein used the UK as a hub to traffic women up until a month before his arrest in 2019. The Eye leads on an exclusive reporting on the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, calling for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to reimburse the public purse if found guilty of misusing funds. The Daily Mail's front reports on the Met Police apologising for revealing Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle as the source of a tip that Peter Mandelson planned to flee to the British Virgin Islands. The Guardian's front leads on hospital cover-ups and falsified medical records in a damning report into NHS maternity care. And staying with health, The Telegraph carries a statement from an ex-Tory minister condemning the doubling of NHS spending as having no impact on the health service. The Mirror looks ahead to tomorrow's by-election in Boulton and Denton. Don't let hate win. They have an op-ed, as we call it, from Sir Keir Starmer. The Daily Express leads on another exclusive as MPs call for France to no longer receive money from the UK until it stops small boats crossing the Channel. On the front of the Metro, police discover a huge cannabis farm hidden in a former casino, they say, in Northampton. And Strictly star Peter Wicks fears gorillas may one day take over the world. The Daily Star's headline, "Gorillas get on my Wicks." I don't know what to say about that at all. But anyway, let's go to the Times, Adam, shall we? And this news that Epstein used the UK as a hub to traffic scores of women up to a month before his arrest in 2019. They've looked at booking records, fuel receipts and flight logs disclosed in the Epstein files.
Yeah, this is all coming from the Epstein files because apparently private planes coming into British airports and indeed sometimes being allowed to use British military bases, really there isn't a close account taken of who's on board and where they've been going, if they were transiting. And thanks to the Epstein files, where Epstein is talking about who he's been moving around the world on his planes, we've now got these details emerging. This is something that the Times has come up with from the Epstein files, but we know that Gordon Brown, really from his standpoint, the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, of campaigning against modern slavery, has been very concerned about the trafficking of people through the UK for a time, and he himself has also produced dossiers of evidence which he's passed to police forces in this country.
Yeah, carry on. Yeah.
What I'm not sure about is what the crime is. I mean, A, whether beyond the Epstein files there's the evidence of who these women who were being trafficked were, but B, if they were passing through the UK, was there a crime there? I mean, clearly people will presumably now want to tighten the regulations on private planes and who's on them, but was a crime committed? I don't know.
Well, to my mind, a really important fact right at the end of this Times story, and that marries up with some reporting that I and colleagues at the FT have been doing, looks at jets linked to Epstein flying through RAF bases. And I think that also raises even more questions than his private jet flying just to commercial airports in the UK. On what basis was he landing there? How were permissions given? Are there any sort of passenger manifests or details still held by the Ministry of Defence? I think those are questions that certainly some MPs have made clear they want to see answers to.
Yes, I mean, plenty of coverage still on the Epstein files, weeks into this now, as you know. And the survivors certainly yesterday in Washington ahead of the State of the Union address by Donald Trump suggested another 3 million documents could be published as well. So we'll, obviously keep an eye on that. In the meantime, should we go to Chagos, something that also relates to the US? Right, clear up the confusion. Is it on pause, the Chagos deal, or not, Adam?
I think the answer is it's on pause, but not officially on pause, if you see what I mean.
I do.
In other words, this is, well, I feel slightly sorry for him. This is Hamish Falconer, the new MP, but also the son of Charlie Falconer as well, who was working in the Foreign Office and has now become a Foreign Affairs Minister. He was making a statement today in response to an urgent question, and his main announcement did not say we're pausing this plan because of what Donald Trump changed his mind, saying that it was a stupid idea. Largely, we think, because there was an argument over whether he could use the base to attack Iran, and the British said you couldn't, and he therefore basically retaliated by saying, well, in that case, I'm going to chuck the whole deal over the side or embarrass you. That appears to be what's gone on. Hamish Falconer was being very diplomatic, but later on in the urgent question, when he was answering questions, he did say, basically, because of what Trump said, we're having to speak to the Americans again, and he used the word pause. And that's been leapt on because At the moment, the deal with Mauritius to basically give them sovereignty over the Chagos Islands and then lease them back has been delayed going through Parliament because although the British government has signed up to it, it needs to be ratified by Parliament. And at the moment, it's fairly unclear whether it would get through Parliament.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's multiple criticisms of it. One is, why are you giving up something you've already got and then leasing it back? The answer is because there's been a UN advisory on it. But then other people like Penny Mordaunt, who's done this show, has said it's just a rubbish deal. It controls the type of radios you can use, you know, what military action you could, you know, fly from Diego Garcia. It's just the detail of it is rubbish. And actually talking about should the US be allowed to fly or use RAF bases for attacks. Here we have it in the Metro as well. Iran's exiled Crown Prince has pleaded with Britain to allow Donald Trump to use its air bases for military strikes.
Well, as well he might, you know, being the exiled Crown Prince wanting to see action taken against the current Iranian regime. I think, you know, this could end up being quite a rift between the UK and the US if Keir Starmer and the government digs in and doesn't allow US long-range bombers to take off from Diego Garcia, the main base in the Chagos Islands. The very reason this whole archipelago in the Indian Ocean that most people had never heard of until several months ago is so important.
But the problem is the British government, in line, it has to be said, with other governments, have determined that an attack on Iran now would be against international law, which gets us back into this whole, and therefore they're saying that the base should not be used, and this was said in the Commons today, should not be used in violation of international law. It's a very, very tricky situation. And of course, the other point which the Minister was making today and which people who've worked on this deal, and the Conservatives had 12 meetings about this deal as well, although they're now against it, is if there isn't an agreement with Mauritius, the worry is that the whole status of the islands will become basically moot. And a lot of people think in those circumstances the Chinese will move in.
Which is the big issue.
Which is what the UK and indeed the United States are desperate to prevent.
Yeah, better to have it, spend the money in order to prevent China having this as a sphere of influence.
And the point is made that actually, I mean, it sounds absolutely terrible to give millions every year to Mauritius to the point that the Mauritian government has already abolished income tax in Mauritius. Yeah. But it is only, I think, 0.2% of the British defence budget. So what you're talking about is it's not big beans.
Yeah, OK. I wonder if we should take a break now, because we've got a big maternity report to look at. Let's take a break. We'll come back with the big report into maternity care services in this country after that.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
So looking at more of the newspapers then, we're going to go to a big story for both The Times and The Guardian. This is maternity care, and this is a report from Valerie Amos, which was commissioned by the government. What are the findings?
Well, they're shocking. She has found that NHS trusts have been falsifying records about the harm and injury they've caused to both mothers and babies in childbirth, including the particularly distressing finding that in some cases they have termed or labelled babies that were that died after potential malpractice by doctors or nurses, midwives, as having died from stillbirth. Thereby allowing them to evade proper scrutiny of what's happened in a coroner's inquest. If babies are born stillborn, that no such process happens. So I think this is a really alarming wake-up call to the government that maternity care, which has been known to be suffering a lot of problems with some particularly terrible scandals in specific trusts over the last few years, needs to be gripped. And I think, to be fair to the NHS, Valerie Amos has also made the point that, it is getting tougher for the NHS to handle because obesity in women during pregnancy is on the rise and mothers are getting older. So that also causes complications in the care that's provided.
Yes, and we've seen criticism in previous investigations into hospitals about hanging on to natural birthing practices longer than you should and delaying medical intervention until it was too late. So there's multiple issues here, aren't there? Adam, should we jump to The Sun? Obviously, the Tourette's sufferer last night blaming the BBC for failing to edit out his involuntary racial slur at the BAFTAs. BAFTAs happens, the broadcast is delayed, is the point. So why did it not get edited out? Could it not be heard?
Well, he's also making the point, which is interesting. He says, why was I sat next to a microphone in the audience? He obviously felt that, they wanted to pick up anything that came from him. And the big question in all this is that although the BBC was presenting this programme, they just seem to have concentrated on the technical element of it. No one senior in a position to say, that's a problem, you should take that out, seems to have been watching it to say, aha, that's a problem, do something about it. And this is a repeat of what happened
at Glastonbury. But they need someone in the room, in the auditorium and in the van doing the editing, or wherever it is they're doing it. And that seems to be the joined-up approach that may not be happening. They've issued a statement, actually. Let's have a look at that, shall we? The BBC has been reviewing what happened at BAFTA on Sunday evening. This was a serious mistake, and the Director-General has instructed the Executive Complaints Unit to complete a fast-tracked investigation and provide a full response to complainants. Fast-tracked is good news, obviously, because we know the Hugh Edwards one was slow-tracked. But anyway, that's divergent.
I bet the Director-General, Tim Davies, glad that he's leaving at the beginning of April.
But you feel sorry for...
I do feel sorry for John Davison, the person in question here with Tourette's. He was there to celebrate a film being made about his life. I also think it's bad news for people with Tourette's and this particular type of verbal tic altogether, who may feel it's more difficult to go out in public or be in scenarios like this where they could be at risk of saying something highly offensive in an involuntary capacity.
Yes, when they were celebrating a film about his life, which was award-winning, as we saw. Harry and Meghan in Jordan with things like the World Health Organization. Why have they gone? And I mean, presumably it was arranged ages ago, but the timing is interesting when you've heard Prince William say he's not in a calm state of mind, and his uncle, Harry's uncle, is stuffed in the back of a police car.
Well, they have clearly planned an initiative, because we've also had Harry talking about Ukraine yesterday. I mean, this is very much good works. It's not kind of, selling jam or whatever. So they're clearly showing that they are potentially like royals. Maybe they're doing it to try and help the royal family with
People
all
could
the
say
issue
it's
about
like
Andrew.
cosplaying royal family.
Yeah, or maybe they're doing it to, stick a needle into.
But you thought it was a show of support for the royal family.
All I think about this is I think that compared to their other activities, this appears to be quite positive and quite constructive.
I'm a little bit more suspicious of Mind, but I do think perhaps there's a third explanation, which is that they see an opportunity to try and get back in the fold now that, the shutters have come down very firmly on Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, Sarah Ferguson. I wouldn't imagine there would be much for Eugenie and Beatrice to play a part in public life going forward. So they may think the King and Prince William might have need of, responsible, well-liked, at least by some quarters of the population.
And they've won their
royals.
thing on security, haven't they? So they can come back to this country with their family.
I can't remember actually, Adam, and we've run out of time, so I can't discuss it anymore anyway. Lucy Fisher, Adam Boulton, thank you both very much indeed. Going to divert to sport after this. Vinicius Junior was among the goals as Real Madrid secured their place in the last 16 of the Champions League.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent.
It takes 60 minutes to cross the Irish Sea. It took the British monarchy a century.
I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
The political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
If there's anyone who might know how to fix Northern Ireland's devolved government, it's the American architect.
Changes in circumstance require changes in approach.
The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland.
I confirmed that I am willing to take up the office of First Minister. My election to the post of First Minister demonstrates the change that's happening on this island.
Catholics and Protestants on different sides, now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19 and end up in hospital, religion's nothing.
People here are adept at finding hope amid adversity. That's the spirit of a place that punches way above its weight.
We help you understand the world with us. A toxic blue-green algae now poisoning Loch Ness. It's breaking your heart what has happened here.
It is.
This is a vital resource, a national treasure, now fighting for its very life. They are effectively surrounded by Northern Ireland, and that makes this the most unlikely of international frontiers.
If there's a hard border, I think it'll cripple the country.
Winter is coming. Welcome to Winterfell. It's an iconic location in this globally acclaimed drama. Ophelia was the most powerful hurricane this far east in the Atlantic on record. Sky News, the full story first.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it. Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about. Join us wherever you get your podcast.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report, and this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Well, time for the sport. Let's head over to Sky Sports News.
Love him, hate him, you can't ignore him. And now, after over 12 years, Roy Keane's Old Trafford career has come to a dramatic end.
What I remember about that day is that Sir Alex Ferguson had his usual press conference at Carrington on the Friday morning. Nothing significant, no real business to talk about.
Metatarsal bones are they're pretty fragile really. He's on the way back anyway, and I think probably 2 or 3 weeks for him.
We're literally 5 minutes up the road away from the press conference and a statement is released. Roy Keane is leaving Man United, so we basically had a press conference, not mentioned it, waited till we all left the training ground and then that was it.
It was a very amicable meeting with Roy and myself, and my best player in my time, but probably one of the best players ever in the history of our club.
So close in the past, now Sir Alex Ferguson must begin the search for a replacement.
He's a talismanic player for us, captain, won a lot with us, and unfortunately he left and we had to do it. That's the same in any football club. You're always, keeping it fluid, keeping it sort of up to date and changing every time. So I think we were prepared for it, put it that way.
United hadn't won the title since 2003. Chelsea were blowing everybody out of the water at that point. Roman Abramovich, Jose Mourinho were coming as coach. They were buying all the best players, and United were going after players like Michael Ballack, Michael Essien, Arjen Robben, all these players that United lined up, and they went to Chelsea. They're now trying to replace Roy Keane, knowing that as soon as they identify a player, Chelsea might take him.
Michael Carrick, when did he first enter the club's radar?
That was a discussion that Alex would have with the scouts, with me, we'd have it with the owners. It's a fluid thing, that is the product, the team, so we always had it under review. We had tried numerous players in that position, and they hadn't worked out for whatever reason, but Michael was a proven player in the Premier League.
At the time, United fans wanted somebody who was combative in midfield, who would control the midfield and break up play. And back then it was Owen Hargreaves. Owen Hargreaves had come back from the World Cup as probably the star of England's World Cup tournament, and the United fans wanted him.
I had signed a 4-year contract when I first signed for Tottenham, and Daniel was coming into 2 years, so I was either sign a new contract or kind of move on really. That was where it was at. So coming to the end of that season was a little bit of what's going to happen, and there was a bit of interest, and you never really know at that stage. You get whispers and this and that.
At the end of the season you have the Premier League meeting and all the clubs get together. I approached Daniel in that meeting to say, look, we'd like to buy Michael. He clearly at that point said he's not for sale, so it went from there really.
I was at the World Cup, Germany.
Hopefully the squad we've got and the players we've got, we could win it. It's going to be difficult.
So it was kind of everything came at once. It was my first World Cup. I was away with my family. I kind of started going through, actually I might have to move on here.
Over the time I got to know which players Alex definitely wanted and which players he would like to have possibly, but he wasn't that worried if we missed out on them. Michael was certainly in that category, one player that he definitely wanted.
Well, that was the wrap. Thanks for watching. The Midnight News is next.